Hello, one and all. IEM Oakland has begun. Our first game is on the cards. NOP will be taking on Astralis, but with a couple of caveats. First of all, we don't have DEixa. There is an absence of the Star Orpa from the stars of Astralis. Pun entirely intended and awful. I'm joined by Yenko and I'm joined by Chad, two ex-players who have turned analysts and are going to be shedding all of that light that you cannot find yourself throughout this game and throughout the series and tournament. Gents, first of all, thanks for joining me. Second of all, Chad.
Yes.
You have been desperately studying that rulebook.
Look,
I'm going to give you the opportunity now to get everyone's head around, I'm talking overtime rules, coaching rules. Just give me the lowdown, and I'm going to give you 60 seconds with my Magic Casio.
The pressure's on.
Time starts now.
All right, so this is a bit of a different format. We have two groups of 6 teams. They play off in a round robin, okay? Now, there's a couple of things we need to touch on here. If you win, it's 3 points. If you win in overtime, it's 2 points. If you lose in overtime, it's 1 point. If you lose in regulation, you don't get any points, okay? So this is going to play into the tiebreaker scenario. If we do have ties within the groups, there will be tiebreakers, which will be played in overtime rules, which are MR 3, 16K. All right, so that needs to be noted. That's out of the way. Now, there's something else that I think is really cool. If you win a match in the group stage, you win an extra $1,000 on top of wherever you place in the tournament with your prize money.
One actually got them through to top 8, and they secured legend status. And at the next major at Atlanta, the E-League major, they actually won the whole thing. So he is no stranger in having to fill in for some of the players, and also for people who are new to Counter-Strike perhaps, or only followed Counter-Strike with CSGO. Zonic was actually a member of MTW. They were a Danish lineup in Counter-Strike 1.6. They were the most successful Danish lineup, best team in the world in 2008. So he's someone who is very experienced at playing at the highest level of Counter-Strike. And even though he would say, yeah, but it's been a while ago and his mechanics aren't good, that's true. But he understands Counter-Strike, and he knows how to play positionally in certain situations, how not to let the team down. So I don't think, I think he can do a good job here.
It's not going to be him doing what DEixa does, though, right? This needs to be said, Chad. This is going to look different to how Astralis normally would.
The biggest star and the spearhead of their attack on the T sides has been removed for this opening matchup, right, until he arrives. Now, I don't know how far away he is. I don't have anybody in my ear telling me what's going to happen. But the cool thing that I think is going to have with Zonic actually being in the server, you see when he's coaching behind, you see how passionate he gets. He's going to actually be right there in the headsets of everybody. And it might spur the rest of the lads on, to step up their game, put on a better performance until DEixa is able to rock up and add that firepower.
Something that's also interesting is, okay, DEixa gets here, game 2 or game 3, whatever. I mean, he couldn't fly in on time because he was sick. So what did he magically he's feeling great now? Straight off of a, 11-hour flight or something, you come in, have to play. You wonder, how much better are they going to be if DEixa in that state has to step in immediately? So I think it's a very interesting situation to see how it develops.
Yeah, we're going to be crossing our fingers and toes, that he does, well, first of all, feel well, second of all, perform to a level Astralis we're expecting here for Oakland. It's a big one for the Danes coming in to close their year on a high. We don't know how well this is going to go for them. DEixa, I've just received word, is actually on his plane now. So he is mid-transit, he's flying. We don't know whether he's going to make the second game. I would assume, knowing how LA traffic is, he's definitely not going to make it for that second game, which is going to be coming up. But for this first one, it's a guarantee we'll be seeing Zonic performing. And then the next question has to be, how do the Ninjas react to this one? They're just going to have to be cutthroat and just try and take full advantage of this turn of events. Yeah,
exactly. And that's where you need these players to show up consistently to be able to get this win. Yeah. This is a big win if NIP want any chance to get it through the group stage, make it to the finals in Oakland. It's not an easy game by any stretch of the imagination, because Astralis is still going to be a very difficult opponent. You still have fresh faces in Rez and Draken right there on your screen who are new to this kind of big LAN environment. But I think, what I've seen from NIP lately is at least a resurgence in their form or their approach to the game. It's been a good mixture of set strategies coming out, obviously, from Thread as the in-game leader, then that loose style, which exists normally, likes to call, is there. We're seeing good things out of Forrest and Get Right. That duo is still on fire. And if these two guys closest to the screen can have good performances consistently, this NIP team becomes very, very dangerous.
And that's what's kind of so crazy, Yenko, is we have seen a resurgence of old names. I mean, for Virtus Pro, it was the Tazes and the Pashas who were forming, and it seems to NIP, we're getting Forrest and Get Right back to the kind of their old ways.
True, Forrest has been fairly consistent, even when NIP was performing very poorly. It was about Get Right? He had a complete fall off in form, and someone who's been the best player in the world and so forth. You really hope that he can come back from that, and he has to an extent. But for me, Threat is one of the most important pieces of this team. He's there with them, standing behind them, and something that NIP was renowned for in 2016 when they started coming back in the first half of the year was their discipline more than anything else. We were talking about those anti-force buy rounds, anti-eco rounds, time and time again, how they wouldn't lose a single player because they were very disciplined, very composed, great usage of utility and so forth. And if he can instill that in the team again, because he's like right there with them, I think that's a very important aspect of NIP's game, because with Threat and Exist and everything, they are going to have a good game plan. They are going to have good gun rounds, and when they have the discipline, their economy is so strong. You have to win like 3 consecutive gun rounds to force them on an eco, and that's very, very difficult to do.
And putting AWPs in Draken's hands. Sorry, I'll let you do your point before I jump.
I was just going to say, to build on what Janko's saying about the economy and the way NIP approach it, they were one of the first teams who were more than happy if you're going to keep force buying and have those weak buys with the scouts and the UMPs, let you save it as opposed to hunting you down, because they're just going to do set executes time and time again, completely like negate your positions or those weapons, and you're just going to have to keep holding on to that trash, and maybe you keep force buying behind it, and that just punishes you and keeps you in the pits of the economy for as long as they can. And
let's not forget, of course, they were the Oakland 2016 champions.
Yes.
They lifted that trophy, and you can see what it meant to them. I love this photo so much. Chris, get right. Sorry, whenever you see a big victory, he is the first man, on his knees, head in hands. They take these victories incredibly passionately. You can see Freiberg there. That was back when he was wearing the NIP jersey. He is still present for Oakland 2017, however, rocking an Optic Gaming jersey. Not many people would have seen that one coming, for sure. Getting to see Draken, of course, and Rez. They were not present there. I think that was Pitt.
Yes.
You can see on the far left there. So that's a different roster. 2 new members, Rez, Draken, and actually that was where I was trying to hopefully end this conversation, or take this conversation, sure. is that of Draken and this dank meme regarding the 30-degree window of missing and flicking. There is some weird truth in this, and I want to try and get to the bottom of it here with you guys, because there is this man does miss some sitters and hit the most absurd stuff. I mean, that goes without saying.
I mean, if you want to go into the mechanics and the nitty-gritty,
how does this happen?
Right? Because he is better at flick shots, it can be one of the 2 things. Either his sensitivity is low, so for the really like tripwire shots, it doesn't really detect when he has to move a little bit. He swipes to get the flick, and that's where he has a very good sense of how far he needs to move the mouse, so that's why he gets those flicks. Or it's the opposite, his sensitivity is actually like a bit high, so then for the small movements it's a bit too much. He like overcompensates.
Yeah, okay.
And for the ones that he needs to flick a bit more, well, then it's just about right.
Yeah, and I mean, we could get lost in a conversation about which AWP you'd rather have, because, I mean, Draken, he can certainly get the highlight rounds, there's no doubt about that, but consistency, I know, just because I've spent so much time with you guys, consistency is a priority for you when it comes to players and how they do perform. Let's start talking then about those maps, because it is going to be a best of 1, where I imagine we just end up in a no man's land / middle ground.
It gets a little bit different in this scenario, right? If you're an NIP, you want to be leaning towards a map that can be really strat heavy. Sure, Zonic is the coach and he knows all the strategies, but throwing those elaborate Molotovs and stuff, and with the role which Device has, if there's certain times where that AWP is very important, so it's going to be interesting how they integrate him into that kind of system. So if you're NIP, you want to go for something which is a bit more tricky, a bit more difficult, a little bit more technical. But you're right, it's probably just going to end up as a middle of the pack map, and maybe Astralis' game plan was to say, hey, maybe we beat them on Nuke all the time, or we beat them on this map and lean towards that. Now that game plan has to change. They're probably going to want something where it's easy for Zonic to be comfortable, maybe like a Mirage or something along those lines, where he can just be used as not a blunt object, but it's just, the individualism from the other players can potentially shine through if he falters.
I guess they could even just brainstorm, like, where is Device the most potent, and just see how they work without him. I mean, there's a lot to be said.
I think a great map for Astralis would be Overpass, right? Because you compare them to someone like the storyline we have with FaZe. You go towards B, it's Nico and Guardian. You go towards A, it's Olaf and Rain, and Kerrigan is hiding somewhere in between, right? That's something that you can do with Zonic as well. He can be the swing player, and you can put your other teammates into motion, because on the CT side, it's more difficult to hide a player compared to the T side.
Well, let's find out. Let's run through those Vitas. It does sound like the players are almost ready. They're actually in the 9th round now, so we'll just have to quickly accelerate through this. Looks like Inferno was taken away by the Ninjas. It's going to be Cobble from Astralis. So bear in mind what our analysts have already said. NIP want to try and take this somewhere where Astralis are going to have to really accommodate the new player, really have to think and change things. Well, speak of the devil, Overpass, Janko, not just a pretty face.
Yeah, I think this is, I mean, depends the way you look at it, right? Yes, you can maybe hide Zonic a little bit on the CT side. On the T side, Astralis has great fundamentals, great defaults. If he knows how to do his part in that sense, that's great for Astralis because they can mask it a little bit and have the other stars perform a bit better. But on the other side of things, it's a very complex map. So if you have small holes in your game, that's something that an aggressive opera like Draken can definitely take advantage of and kind of shred you to pieces. Yeah,
well, they have an AWPer. Astralis can't say the same for them currently. Let's see how they do fare, though. It sounds like the game is ready, and so our first game of IEM Oakland 2017 is about to begin. Let's kick this all off with a banger. It's on Overpass with Henry G and Sadakist.
Thank you so much. Yes, it is going to be a banger. I think that's a good way to put it. However, it's going to be interesting to see how Astralis perform. I imagine Dupree takes over the AWP.
Yes, I was about to say the same thing. He's been trying to slot himself into the role of secondary AWPer. It's been something of, I guess, criticism for the team overall that they don't have a secondary AWPer, so Dupree's trying to fill that role. But now, he's got to be primary, and he can be pretty decent. We've cast a lot of Pro League games where he's not every game looking good with it, but he has every map, like every few maps, he looks actually pretty lights out. He's hit some nut shots, so hopefully he can go toe-to-toe with Draken today. Like the guys mentioned, Draken, a very aggressive AWPer, sometimes pretty bad in terms of his situational decision-making. Like if he gets the first pick, it's difficult for him to fall back, it seems. He wants to keep going and going, which is fine if he's hitting the shots, but sometimes loses them some rounds, so maybe Dupree can take advantage of that. We'll find out. It's obviously going to be a disadvantage here with the coach playing, but Zonic has done this before. They've had success at majors with this, so we'll see if it works out for them today.
Well, NIP starting out on the T side, going against Astralis on Overpass is always a tough proposition, but they've had good success on this map as of late as well. I think the Youngblood has been very promising on this map.
He's looked really good as of late. Like his skill level is getting higher and higher every single day, it seems. So that'll be an interesting little storyline to follow. We have got a slight issue before the game starts, so we'll have a look at their faces. You can see there's Astralis with, of course, Zonic. We are not kidding you, he is there, and he is playing instead of DEixa, who will be turning up to the venue soon, and then they're going to kind of work out whether they think he's fit to play at that point, I assume.
Yeah. Well, exactly. So what I gathered from speaking to Mia just before she went on set with Trey, I was actually just beside them, so just casual conversation. I basically said, like, that's got to be tough. Have you got any updates? She said, well, they land at 12. He's definitely asleep and been sleeping on the plane, which is a good thing because you don't want to be exhausted when you get here. But that depending on LA traffic, which is, for lack of a better word, a bitch, depending on when he gets to the studio, if he needs time to warm up or if it's too sudden to put him into the game, they'll give him that sufficient time, and Zonic will play the second game as well. If DEixa decides, okay, I'm feeling fresh, I'm ready to go, then I think Imagine will
The good news is, this not being GSL format, it's round robin, right? So you only need to come top 3 to make it to the playoffs. Sure, coming top in the groups is going to get you in the semi-final, but I think at this point, it's just a matter of getting through the groups. If they could even just get an overtime defeat here, that means they get points. With one of the first tournaments from what I can recall in round robin, we actually get points.
I like it.
Similar to Pro League, actually getting something on the board for getting to overtime. So that's quite cool. So even if they get to overtime and lose there, that's enough. That will just get them a point, and NIP will go into this one knowing that they're the clean favourites, but they're not going to pull any punches. They are one of the teams, as we mentioned in the pre-game, that have done this as well before. Threats had to stand in as a coach. I think it was Columbus. Like, don't quote me on that. It sounds about right. Either way, they managed to do the same thing. They got legendary status through threat playing, so they know this is still capable. Zonic's a legendary 1.6 player. He knows how to approach the game and what he can do just to guarantee 1 kill a round. That's what he's really aiming for, is play those positions that allow him just to not necessarily hit the craziest of shots, but trade of his team, not going in first and just kind of holding at certain angles to give him that 1 kill per round. So that's what we're looking for from him. I think they definitely start the chance here. The problem is it's the AWPer they're missing. That is a little bit catastrophic, you know, but Dupree, this is when he needs to step up and show us he is capable of being world-class.
This is something that's interesting, is with Zonic being not in the coaching role and being at the computer, Mia's actually, as a psychologist, in-game now. She's got that on. That may give her a different perspective on things. I'm sure that during practices and stuff she is, because I know that they're playing boot camps and she's always there. And I know that she probably reviews some of the communications with them, and maybe even online she's keeping up. I'm not sure, but it's interesting.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are underway.
It also gives them live psychological perspective